Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm so honored to be hosting a panel this year, and I'm just so excited to dive into your incredible work and anchored by this year's Ariff Festival theme, Africa in Frame. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Mbali Mashaba, and I am a South African creative researcher. I'm a filmmaker and a film curator. I'm really passionate about storytelling and nuanced representations of Black life and shaping stories around the complex lives of women. I'm the founder of a film curating agency called Behind Her Lens Visuals, with a mission to provide accessible stories to audiences on the African continent and the diaspora, in order to just bridge the gap between industry professionals and emerging filmmakers. I also founded the agency's film festival, and it's called Real to Reality Festival, under the same mission. When I'm not making films, I spend my time curating films to audiences and engaging with filmmakers that make them, in order to just understand, the work that they put behind these films, some of their narrative considerations and ideological considerations as well. And I absolutely love celebrating this medium. Um, and I'm so excited to get into this conversation. Today, I'm joined by three incredible African diasporic filmmakers, two of which are already here. I'd love to introduce you before we start, before we dive in. Today, we're joined by Neo Paulus, an award-winning South African female cinematographer and photographer. Neo is a director. She's also a content creator. Her career started in photography at the University of Pretoria in 2012, where she gained her skills, and started her own photography work. She opened her office at Sasani Studios in 2017 and shot her first documentary called My Sexuality, My Pride. She registered her own production company called Manewa Films in 2018 and is also known for working on various hits and award-winning shows in different genres in the South Africa, as well as telenovelas, reality shows, documentaries, all rounder. It's giving multi-talented. Um, she is also working with Napo Mashiane on her story, as a co-producer, and also shoots for one of the largest banks in South Africa, Standard Bank, as a photographer and a director of photography. I'm also joined by Kaelo Iyizoba, a Nigerian American filmmaker. He holds a Master's of Fine Arts in Film from Columbia University and was a practicing pharmacist before he's found his voice in film. And like many people of his region in Nigeria, Kaelo considers himself a trader, and his merchandise is empathy. Kaelo was also cited by BuzzFeed as one of the 4 up-and-coming Black filmmakers shaping the future of the industry, and is a winner of the Arthur Krim Award for Excellence in Producing at Columbia University. He is also a Facebook Scene Future Filmmaker Grant recipient, and in 2002, Kaelo spoke at a panel at Sundance Film Festival, and his first narrative short, Boy Meets Girl, won an award for Outstanding Experimental Film at the Abuja International Festival in 2021. His following short film, Nke Mefuna, premiered at the Phoenix Film Festival and was subsequently screened at the Lincoln Center as part of the New York African Film Festival. Kaelo's film, Boy Meets Girl, will also be showing at this year's Ariff Festival on Sunday at the Bioscope Independent Cinema, as well as the film that Neo worked on, incredible documentary film called From One Woman to Another, that will also be showing at this year's Ariff Festival on Saturday. So to kick off, there's a question that I really love asking filmmakers, every time I'm given an opportunity to just engage with filmmakers from Africa or the African diaspora. And it's a question that I'd like to start this conversation with. And that question is, what does African cinema mean to you?
Okay, so I will go then. Hi everyone. It's so great to be here speaking with all of you and with Mbali, who I met a few months ago. Um, so I mean, what does African cinema mean to me? For me, it's us telling our stories as authentically as we can in our own way, in a way that isn't like tainted or colored by other or perspectives in a way that is original to who we are. I feel like because a lot of the continent was like colonized and we've gone through all these interruptions in our own history, we have to find a way and carve a way to tell our own stories and kind of intentionally discover our own version of cinema. I mean, we've always been storytellers, and now for his since generations, since the greats from Senegal and all of that, we've been
Mm.
finding ways to tell our own stories in our own way. And I think like even from the Nigerian perspective, from like Nollywood and old Nollywood and the movies we used to make back there, they were authentic to ourselves. And I think all of that is all encompassing in what African cinema means to me, whether it's the high art or whether it's the melodramatic flicks. It's all part of us. It's all part of our story. And I think it's all about us owning that and being unapologetic about it.
I love that. What does African cinema mean to you, Neo?
So African cinema means seeing our own stories being told our African way, the way we want to tell it. So for me, it means no limit. It means being creative and not adapting into more like in the Western storytelling. So I prefer telling my story my own way. So yeah, for me, it's just that seeing my story the way I want to tell it, the African way.
I love that. I love the fact that it's so it's not like a one-dimensional answer. There's so many aspects because we're such a deeply we have so many cultures on the continent, and there's so much that the medium of film can be used, and I really like that your answers encapsulated that. So I'm curious to know, based on your understanding of what African cinema is, how does that inform the way that you decide to tell stories, based off of what you understand African cinema, how does that subconsciously or consciously shape the stories that you make?
Oh, me.
So Neil, you should go. I went first the first time.
Okay, for me, honestly, I'm still struggling with that. So I wish I could answer it honestly, but I'm still struggling with that because even when we try to pitch, we are still we are not allowed to tell the story the way you want to tell it. So for me, I still feel like I don't have an answer for that. But if I had to tell my stories the way I want to tell it, I don't want to filter it. If it's an African story, can it be a South African, an African story? So recently, I'll just make an example. I wanted to pitch something. It's about colors and horses, right? How many stories have you seen about colored people? How many stories have you seen so far? There's like 2% of it. So for me, I still feel like we are not there yet. We are not given the platform to tell our stories as much as we would like to present them. So I don't have an answer. Yeah, that we don't.
I feel just like Nell, I feel like I am still discovering that as on this journey, because like filmmaking for me, it's a journey. It's something I'm still discovering. But for me, the most important thing is being intentional and having it at the back of my mind that this is what I'm trying to do. And putting that first in front of everything that I do so that I am aware that this is like in every aspect of filmmaking, in my writing, in my directing, in my producing, that I am aware that I want to be intentional about being authentic to myself, about being authentic to my people. And I feel like being like incorporating like African cinema, like recognizing that in our work, it's something that it's almost a form of resistance, if I can say so. It's a form of us kind of like saying that we are here, our stories are valid, we have empathy, like the world can have empathy with us on our issues, on the stories we choose to tell. Like it doesn't have to fit the Hollywood box or the European feel. Like it can be our own way, and it's something that the whole world can embrace. And I think that is something I'm actively trying to and intentionally trying to do in my work.
I love that, you know. So just, you know, to piggyback off of that, you know, I really think that right now, you know, I've noticed as I'm curating films, I'm watching films, you know, from Africa, the African diaspora, there's something really powerful about African cinema right now. And I think that filmmakers are really using it as a tool to reflect the times, to reflect their social political context. And I think that is true of Boy Meets Girl. You know, it's true of the other film that we're going to talk about today, Port of the Prince as well. You know, so I think that, you know, everybody talks about, like, you know, film being a medium for storytelling, but sometimes film is a medium for change, and sometimes film is a medium for reflection, and sometimes film just reflects on the everyday, you know. And so I'm just interested in understanding from you, Kaelo, you know, how you navigate the dynamic of creating a film, especially with Boy Meets Girl, creating a film that is about a bigger social political crisis, but still making it about the ordinary. And how do you bring across the concept of the ordinary in your films? Um, how do you decide what is more important, the political, the social, or, you know, the ordinary? How do you make those decisions? And especially in the case of Boy Meets Girl.
So I feel like for me, like that's like I immediately need the answer to that question, like personally for me. And the fact that like I feel like the ordinary will always trump the bigger issue, the ordinary, the specific, the little things, the little moments in life. Those are the moments that matter. And I feel the bigger issues are invited to join that moment. They interfere with those moments, they raise those moments up. So those things are always happening in the background. They're always part of our lives. But the things that matter the most are the things that matter to us the most, whether it's love, whether it's pain, whether it's trauma, whether it's grief, it's what the specific human being is going through. And we can always experience the bigger issue through that lens, through that eyes. And that is what really matters. That is where empathy is born. It's not in the big issue of terrorism or war or any of the big things that challenge our world. It's the people who have to go through this. So it's, for me, it's focusing on the small, focusing on the specific, and believing that that specific thing, that little thing, will be universal, and people from anywhere around the world can connect to that and empathize with that.
I love that answer. And I think also keeping in mind, like what you said, that these are real stories, you know, these are stories of real people who are facing real forms of violence or real forms of social political issues, you know. How sensitive are you to telling these stories? Like, how do you avoid representational violence in your work? Like I wonder if maybe there are some like techniques that you are constantly aware of, that help you articulate the ordinary over this big political or political crisis, especially in the case of Boy Meets Girl. I mean, it's set against the backdrop of, you know, the Boko Haram and the Chibok girls that were abducted, you know. So how do you avoid that representational violence? Because we never actually see, you know, the bomb going off in the film. But we know that the violence is there, you know. So how do you make those decisions?
For me, I think it's because the films aren't about, or my films specifically aren't about the violence. It's about the people and how do I respect them? How do I tell their story without over glorifying the violence that is thrust on them. I feel like for like Boy Meets Girls, it's literally started as an assignment in film school, and the prompts that my professor had given was to tell a story that by the end, your protagonist's world changes forever. And that is what I went into that film with.
Yeah.
So it was about this boy, it was about this innocence that is being stripped away, and he will never grow up. He will grow up to be completely different. Like his childhood ended in that moment, essentially. And it's also about the girl who finds herself in this situation that she has no control over. And for me, it was establishing that relationship in the film. And even though it lasts for a couple of minutes, I felt like I wanted a world to have been experienced in those minutes. And like in the film, the bomb doesn't. There was a version of the film where the bomb did go off.
Oh wow!
Yes, yes. And after several discussions with my professor, it was like, it's not necessary. You already know what this film is about. It's not about the bomb. It's not about the
Yes.
explosion. That might have some shock value, but when it comes down to the actual, what the story is about, it has a smaller value to that. So.
Wow, that's really interesting. Thank you for that background there. I wondered what it would be like, you know, that's really interesting. And then I also want to speak about audience, you know, as we're talking about what as we're defining what African cinema means to us, and you know how it informs the way that we create our stories, or whether or not we're figuring it out, you know. I think both of you have experience with international film festivals. Kaelo, you have awards, and critically, you know, you have people who have written from other countries about your work, you know, and I think that's quite an achievement to be able to create a story about African people that transcends countries and cultures and continents. So I'm curious to know, I guess, from both of you, is that something that is intentional when crafting your stories? Are you thinking, do you think that African audiences are your core audience? And as you craft your story, are you thinking about, you know, later the international film festivals? Like, what would you say, you know, who are your audiences?
There's a film that I shot in 2019. It's also showing in Atlanta as we speak. It's called Safe Outside. Is it ready for Africa? No, it's not.
What makes you say that? What makes you say that?
Safe Outside, imagine I shot it in 2019, but it's been doing a good around the world out there, but I only had 2 screens since it was shot. Last year, I only had 1 day of screening it, and I took it back to Atlanta. And we have won awards. One of the best awards, it was called Brave Award, like Brave Film Awards, something like that. So we've won 7 awards so far with that film. Why I'm saying it's not ready for Africa, it's the same thing that I mentioned before. You go pitch your films, you go to these broadcasters, and then you're saying, I want to tell this story, and they're like, we are not there yet. We are not there yet. What do you mean we are not there yet? If it's not ready for South Africa, is it ready for Africa?
I'm
You
curious to
see?
know what the subject matter of this work is, you know, and also it like if you when you shot it, were you thinking about international audience? Because I mean, you shot it. They said that we're not ready, but you still shot it, and it's traveling the world now. So, did you then make a conscious decision to say, okay, well, I'm still gonna make it. You might not be my audience, but I'm still gonna make it because someone out there is gonna resonate with it.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was like, I'm not gonna limit this. I'm not gonna throw my story away because 2 or 3 people don't believe in it. But let me shoot it and see where I can put it. I have few contacts in the UK's, I have few contacts in the US and all of that. So they're like, no, let's see it. Send it to us and let's see what we can do. Then I met up with some young people from Atlanta and they were like, no, we can screen it. You know, so produced it, shot it myself, sort of developed, like we did everything to like everything, and they liked it, and it's still showing in Atlanta. Another one that I just shot now, I don't know this. We don't know what's gonna happen to two governments. It's two governments. It's India and South Africa. So we shot it in part of it in India, and then we shot some of it in South Africa. It's one of those where you're like, we don't know how the world will receive it, because at some point we also beating through, going through, and you're challenging human beings here. So I don't want to go on it a lot, but what I want to tell you is some stories you just feel like they are not ready yet, because when you go to pitch, they're like, it's not there yet. Yeah,
that's really interesting, and I think that tells us a lot about the types of people that are in charge of making decisions, you know, and how open they are, and also just questioning if some of the decisions that they make are for the betterment of storytelling, you know, even if they are in these positions. What about you, Kaelo? Would you say African audiences are your core audience? Are you thinking about international audiences when you make films?
So I would say I'm definitely African audiences are my core audience. I mean, like that's my people. Like, who else would I be making films for if not my people? And especially for people whose voices have been marginalized largely, at least in the space of film. I think it's particularly important to tell stories for us and by us. Our fair share of like rejections, like all the film festivals we had sent to us, like rejections. And at the point I was like, oh, maybe the film isn't that good. I never really had prospects for the film in Nigeria, if I'm being honest, because it touches on like a very sensitive subject that I assume most film festivals will shy away from.
Okay.
And then we get into the Abuja Film Festival, which is a government, it's run by the Nigerian government, which in my opinion, like hates talking about anything that's real or anything that's happening in the country. And we get in there and then we win their award for like best experimental film. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, like
Yeah.
how is this even happening? Like I had no hope of like the Nigerian like establishment accepting this film and the truth that the film is trying to tell. And for some reason they did. And now we are what 2 years down the line or 3 years down the line since making this film, and it's suddenly getting all the attention. And I'm like, the
Oh,
film hasn't changed. I don't
wow.
know what I don't really know what
Yeah,
has
what
changed.
changed? You know, yeah, that's
Yeah,
really
like
interesting.
we did a festival in the UK that's like a BAFTA qualifying festival. We got like a review in Teen Vogue a few weeks ago. So I'm like,
Oh,
where is
amazing.
this all coming from? But yeah,
Yeah.
and then now
Wow.
at Ariff. So I'm like, okay. So I will keep making films for my people, for myself, things that I want to see, things that I want to watch, and just believe that that audience will find it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, 100%. The audience that you intend for the film, one way or another, ends up finding it, you know. Yeah. Nero, let's talk a little bit about your work, you know. You studied and you still practice photography quite heavily. How does your background in photography assist you in your cinematography work?
If you said to me, choose between film and photography, I would go for photography.
Oh, wow. Why is that?
Photography for me, it's more intimate. Like, I love it so much. I connect with it so bad that even when you're telling a story, it's there. Like, it's in the eye. So when you come to cinematography and all of that, yes, it's the same. They are similar, but photography, it's my first love. I love it. And for me to even love it more is I was working with the oldies a lot, like shooting the late Mam Dorothy Masuke, Jonas Gwangwa. So I connected with the oldies a lot, and I felt like, let me tell their stories through music. That's how I connected with it. Then I was starting to do self-portraits. So when shooting myself, this is how I would like to tell a story. Then it went in, photography into documentary to films. But I still love photography, honestly speaking. And then did documentaries. Now I'm doing reality and documentaries again. But documentaries, docu-films is the one. I'd rather go for docu-films because it's more. So the reason I say I would love documentaries more than anything is it's true stories, it's human stories. So more than anything. So why I love documentaries more than anything.
That's
I
really
do have pilot work that I've created. But hence I said not ready yet.
Okay, let's talk about your cinematography work now. I think oftentimes people forget about, you know, some of the critical crew that makes a film success, like beyond the director or the writer, you know. So I'm curious to know, how do you ensure that your voice as a cinematographer is heard in your work, you know, or at least your vision, and what is your dynamic with the directors that you work with?
Okay. With most of the films that I do directing and cinematography at the same time. So I kind of do directing and shooting at the same time. So if it's a 13 part or a 4-part, I'll have 2 directors. Then it's easier for me to listen to another version instead of me now directing and shooting. But listening to another person, it makes work easy. Firstly, remember, I have to tell someone stories and then break it down to what they want. So and working with the team that listens to you, it's the most beautiful thing ever. As much as sometimes it's difficult to work with, hence I prefer hiring females only sometimes because it's easier. Because sometimes, as young as we are, it's hard for you to give a note to someone to help you out on set. I'll tell a 57-year-old man that he's doing lighting, be like, Baba Spanman, may you please help me with this lighting? This is how I want it. No, you know how I've been in the industry. I've been in the industry for so long, and you're like, all I want is just a light. Can you just help
fix
me
the
with
lighting?
You know, but again, it's challenging because at that time you as a cinematographer, you have to respect everyone. You have to respect your set, because if you don't respect them, no one is gonna do you a favor. No one is gonna work with you on set. Like, you'd want this, they're not gonna help you. They'll just give you a shady work, and that's not what you want. All you gotta do, be humble on set and just work. That I can tell you, as a female, it's hard, to be honest with you. It's very, very,
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I'm in it. I know all about it. Oh my gosh.
The way you said it, it came from here. You're like, oh, I know that one.
It came from inside. Okay,
Yeah.
let's let's talk about Boy Meets Girl. I, as somebody who has seen most of your films, something that really stands out to me every time is your visual language. I always think that the way that you approach films is very immersive, through your camera language, through your shot selection, and just how you decide to visually translate a piece, even sonically. And so I just want to know what was that intentional, when you were making Boy Meets Girl? And I mean, you even went for a 4:4 aspect ratio. So I'm curious to know, like, what inspired that visual language in the film.
So for Boy Meets Girl, and for film generally, it's like film is a visual form. It's a visual art form, and I mean, I could have been writing books or audiobooks or any other thing form of storytelling, but I chose film, and I feel like you have to do that justice. Like you have to exhaust every way possible of like visually representing the story you want to tell or the feeling you want to convey. And then after you've exhausted that, that's where you now fall back on other things like dialogue and everything else that comes with film and sound. And for Boy Meets Girl, I knew I really wanted to make something that almost completely relied on visual storytelling. So which is why in the film there's virtually no dialogue. It's 8 minutes of just film of visuals. Of course, the sound design and all of that to elevate that. But I really wanted to rely on the shots and wanted the shots to speak for themselves over putting dialogue to be delivered by actors. And also like challenge, because it was also a challenge for my actors on this project, on like everything has to be said with your eyes and with your face. And I think it was an interesting challenge for us. And I am glad we did that. And even when the film was first written, it was the prompt, as I told you before, was a film where the protagonist's life changes completely at the end, and there was meant to be no dialogue and no lines of dialogue, 2 pages. So that was
Yeah.
how the film was born. Um, so I think, yeah, definitely like visual language will always come first for me, and then everything else follows. And I think it's also like important to like talk about like cinematographers, because I worked with an amazing cinematographer who kind of understood where my head was at. And one
Mm,
thing I've learned a lot of like in my time on set so far in this industry is like it's about giving ownership to the people that you're working with. Like, okay, you might
mm,
have had this idea, you might have written this script, but then you're inviting other people to come in, you're inviting other people's ideas, you're inviting your cinematographer, your gaffer, your everybody else is creative in their own way, and you need to allow that latitude and that space for them to express themselves. And that's when you see people give their best work, where they feel like this is their project as well, where they actually take ownership of it. um
100%.
and
Yeah.
that is something I I try to always do on my sets. And which is why even when I write my scripts, like I give space to the actor. I give space to everybody. Like even though I know specifically, oh, this is how exactly I want it, but I'm like, there could be a better way. I may not have all the angles
All the
covered.
answers, yeah.
So exactly, why don't I leave space so that when somebody reads this, they might have an idea of their own that they could bring to it that might be better than what I was thinking. And that's my entire like process and system with film.
I think it's a really good system, 100%. So I would like to know, where did you shoot the film? Did you shoot the film in the region where the incident that it's inspired by happened? Was that in Northeast Nigeria? Where did you shoot the film?
So we didn't shoot in Northeast Nigeria. At that time, it was
Okay.
still pretty unsafe. So we shot in North Central. We shot in the capital actually, and we found like a suburb that kind of looked and had the feel that we're looking for. So that's where we shot the film.
Okay.
I would have loved to go to Borno State and shoot, but it was just not feasible, like logistically at that time.
Yeah, and was this the area that you shot the film in? It's not the area that you're from, right? It's different from where you're from.
Yes, so I'm from the southeast, and Abuja is the capital, which is further up north. I had
Okay.
lived there for 2 years, so I was a little familiar with the area, so it made it easier. And literally, like all the cast, the extras, everybody that worked on it was like people and friends that I had made in my 2 to 3 years there. All the people on the bus were like people from my gym that knew I was making a film, and they were like, "Yeah, sure." Will
Wow.
be in
Oh
your
my
film.
God. Yeah.
So um it was a really, really fun experience, and that these were people who like I wasn't offering money, I wasn't offering anything. They were
Mm,
there because they knew who I was and they believed that I could make this vision come to life, and they
mm.
wanted to be part of it. So it was a very, very wholesome experience for me.
Wow, that is so interesting. I would have never guessed, you know. I love having these conversations because you get to understand from the filmmaker's point of view what it was actually like. Because when you're watching, you're not picking up on these things, you know. I think something that I really enjoyed about this film, or you know, something that I'll always remember about, something that makes it very memorable for me, is the fact that you know it really places this really big political crisis in this everyday moment of walking to get a taxi, you know, and on your way to school, like the boy was in the story. I would like to know, you know, how difficult was it actually shooting in a taxi in the real environment of quote unquote real environments? You know, what were some of the behind the scene struggles that you had? Because even sonically, you know, you can't pick up a lot of noise in the area. I mean, you hear a car here and there, but I know that I'm in the space, but I can't even hear, you know, and I see that I'm in the space. So yeah, how difficult was shooting in the actual real environment?
So I would say uh, maybe it wasn't the best idea for my first short film to be on a moving bus, but
But you did it.
but we did it. It was very challenging. Um, Even like because of the tight space, even figuring out how to move the camera and how to place the camera and where it can be in that space was something we tried to rehearse as much as possible before we got to set. So that helped a lot with by the time we got to set, we had like an idea of like, okay, how the camera would move in this space. I also think it helped that there was no dialogue in the bus or in the film. So
Yeah,
basically
okay.
sound was not the biggest issue for us. We could do all of that in post and
Great
figure it
tricks.
out then. And so
Yeah.
that really helped. And yeah, like so I had like amazing producers who really like moved heaven and earth to make this film happen. And I remember the night before we shot,
Mm.
we didn't even have one of the actresses was like we hadn't found the person yet, and we
Wow.
were literally walking on the streets at like 8 p.m. in the night looking to see, so I felt like I was a kidnapper at that point. It was we're just looking to see anybody that like fit the description, and we'll just approach them and be like, would you please help?
Oh my goodness.
But eventually we found somebody who was actually perfect for the role, and it felt like it was always meant to be that way. But I would say like in hindsight, like it all like feels worth it, and I enjoyed every moment of it. But I still have like memories of them of being in it, and they were not the most fun.
Yeah, I can imagine. No, it was worth
and,
it. It really was.
and and it's also like the budget for this film was less than $500. So it's also like budget-wise, we were on shoestrings. Like actually
Yeah.
a shoestring is a lot. A thread is what you were on.
Oh my goodness. Wow. What an interesting story.
So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so you went to school at Columbia. And I want to know, and then you come back and you make stories in Nigeria, and you film stories in Nigeria. How does the privilege of being educated abroad, how does that help your stories? How do you feel like that helps your stories when you come back and create them in Nigeria?
So I feel for me, it's like, first of all, everything that I write, everything that I want to write and I want to make, is rooted back to Nigeria, rooted back to the places I grew up in, the people I experienced. Even when I shoot abroad, I still find a way of finding that Nigerian influence in my work. And I would say like Colombia was helped. It was a lot of stress, like school. I mean, I did 6 years of pharmacy school, and 3 years of this film school was so much harder than that.
Oh, wow.
And yes, yes. So, but in hindsight, it feels very much worth it. It feels like if I were to do it again, I will gladly do it. I would say so. Colombia prides itself as like the story school. That's what we're good at. It's like breaking story down and the dynamics of it and how it works and telling the most authentic and truest stories to ourselves. They keep telling us, oh, you're here to find your voice, blah, 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 like things like that. And it actually does help. It's actually like, it's like they want us to forget about all the frills and the all the big things about filmmaking and just focus on the small things about ourselves that would help us write the best stories. And I think the professors there like did an amazing job in like imbibing that into us.
Mm.
And then coming back to Nigeria, bringing back this expertise, this knowledge, it's been phenomenal. Also, like Nigeria has this thing. I don't know if it's the same in South Africa, where if you are from the abroad or like from elsewhere, there's somehow more respect, which
Okay.
is very
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah.
Because you've done something elsewhere and you're now back. It's like, oh, because I mean, I was here before and nobody ever looked at me, so
Yeah,
I'm like,
now you're looking at me. Yeah. Oh, that is
But
so
yeah, that's also the
interesting.
thing in
Yeah.
Nigeria.
It's the
Yeah.
respectability politics change, based off of what you attain in life. It's really interesting. Now let's talk a little bit about from one woman to another. I think it's a really beautiful documentary, and I think the thing that makes it really beautiful is the way that it was shot. Very beautiful, clean visuals. I want to know from you, what was your approach with the director? What was your process to filming this documentary?
Okay. Firstly, working with the director, that woman, I love her, I respect her so much. So, when I was wrapped into this project, she wasn't even here, and then now she's in the UK, I'm here, and now we're exchanging notes. So meaning that she's directing while she's there, and I'm here by myself. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, she wasn't here at first when we started shooting, and now I remember my first Reiki when
Yeah.
when I did my first Reiki. I was in Cape Town. So I was doing Reiki over the phone because I was shooting something in Cape Town, and now I'm doing Reiki over a phone. I'm not even sure how the place is looking like. Then I call a friend of mine. I'm like, please go and check if the Reiki place is looking good and what. He's like, no, I can't. I'm on set. Now I have to tell the director that, okay, I'm on my way back to Joburg. I'll go do the Reiki. Then I did the Reiki in the morning. And cast members are coming. So I'm like, no, listen,
Oh
everything
my
is fine.
gosh.
Yeah. So I'm telling her, no, everything is fine. Do not worry. We're good. And now she's giving me notes. And yeah. Remember the person that I'm supposed to be directing now? I'm talking about someone who's been in the industry for so long. She's an EP, she's a director, she's a producer, and now I have to direct her. So for me, directing,
wow.
yeah, for me, directing Bongi, it was all over,
Intimidating.
yeah, it was all over the place. And then all she says like, "This is your set, relax." That was the first part. And when now, oh yeah, it was around October. Second part of it, Lindy had to come down. Now she's in South Africa. We're working through this, and she's like, okay, this is what I want. I want you to focus on this, ladies. And also, even her, she's respecting everyone on set, from production, sound, your unit people. Like, she's so respectful, and it was so easy working with Lindy. I don't want to lie to you. She's a good director. So now, even her, the respect she has for Lindy, it was something else, because now she doesn't want her to stand too long. She just wants her to, because this is Bongiwe. How do we work with Bongiwe? She's been in the industry. And now we're having all these women, Olile Shabalala, Nozipo, Nkembela, Fairy Jelle, like all these people. I grew up seeing them on TV. And now Lindy is just being fragile with them. And I'm like, how are we going to do this? But yeah, she's a very nice person, so humble. Yeah. It was so easy. Yeah. That's all I can.
I'm so glad. What a crazy story, but it all worked out in the end.
It did.
And you created such a beautiful, beautiful movie.
Yeah.
I was looking forward to speaking to you, because I really don't know. I can put them on my finger, the number of, female cinematographers in South Africa. It plagues me every day, and I want to know what advice would you give somebody who is young and wants to come into the industry, and is trying to be a cinematographer? What is the best advice that you can give them, from a practical point of view, or just from your experiences of being on sets?
Okay. What I want to say is, as a female, when you're on set and you're on a camera crew, do not be a coffee girl. Stop being a coffee girl. You will make coffee for 2 or 3 years, and the only thing that you're going to learn is to put on a lens, because of gatekeepers. So for you to do it, while you're on set, try to learn as much as you can. If possible, try to create your own. We are all not producers, but for you to learn, for you to get to where you want to get, try and create your own as well. Being on set, it's good. Like, I love filming with all my heart, but it's easy to break you, especially as a female. Secondly, get on set, learn. Get on set, grab as much as you can. The first person who gave me an opportunity, it was Mr. Brown. So when I got there, it was like, just learn how to put a lens, because you get there, they don't want you to touch equipment. How are you going to learn without touching equipment? You get there, your DOPs, they want you to go make coffee. On my set, I don't do that. If I'm late, it's my responsibility that I'm not going to have breakfast because I'm late. I'm not going to make another person make coffee for me. If you're making it for me, it's from the goodness of your heart. Thank you so much, but you are not forced to do that. Thirdly, I'm so emotional about this because it hurts so much seeing it happen, and it's happening all over, like every time. I just want to say, get there, do your job, focus, and yeah, that's it. That's all I can say. But being a coffee girl on set, no, that's not it.
That's solid advice, because everyone tells you to be the coffee girl, and I want so much more for Black women that are coming into, film and television, to just know that
Because Mbali, if you look at the camera department as a whole, the female, you are allowed to, it's okay for you to be a clapperboard girl, clap, it's fine. For you to be a focus puller, how many camera operators do you have? You can just, like, you can name them,
I
But
can't,
it's not easy for you to be a cinematographer, for you to be a DOP, but it's okay for you to be a director but as a technical person, it's difficult.
That's true.
All I want to say is keep pushing. There will be words where they will tell you that, hey, I've been a focus puller for 12 years. You have to be a VT operator, a loader, this and that. But what if my eye is on the camera? I've never pulled, and I was forced, like, no, you have to pull. I was like, that's my destiny. I know what I want. So why do you want me to pull so bad? That's when I was like, let me just sit down and try.
It's all these hurdles that they create, so they make it harder for you to succeed, Yeah. Okay, last closing word, from both of you. How do you
let me
want your
switch on the
work?
lights. It's dark in here.
Okay, you can switch on the lights. How do you want your work to be remembered? What is the archive that you want to create with your work?
That's a really, really broad question. I feel like for me to answer that, it's like I want it to be remembered in the sense that I stayed true to myself. I stayed as authentic as possible to myself. I told the stories that I wanted to tell. And my audiences found it. Because I feel like we live in a world where, like, especially as we grow bigger and enter more rooms and enter more spaces, the industry tends to want to contort you into the vision it has of you, of yourself, instead of the self that you started out with. And I've seen it happen 1,000 times. There's a big danger of, like, losing yourself in the razzmatazz of, like, this showbiz and Hollywood and all of that. So for me, it's to be true to myself and true to the stories I've always wanted to tell. And even if I make a Hollywood blockbuster, I will bring that small part of myself to it that you will recognize, oh, this is the same person that made Boy Meets Girl in that Marvel film or whatever. So that's my answer to this.
What about you, Neo? How do you want your work to be remembered? How do you want to be remembered?
I want to create, firstly, I would say in my productions, I want to create more jobs for more people, for more young people, open gates for those who really want to be in the industry, who are willing to learn. Secondly, telling more stories, touching stories, stories that that people relate to. That's how I want to be remembered. I want to tell a story that I know that I will be remembered for. I want to leave a mark. That's all.
Thank you so much for your time. I enjoyed speaking to both of you. And I hope everyone goes out and watches your film this weekend. But thank you so much. This was so great. And I wish you all the best in all your future endeavors. And yeah, talk soon.
Thank you so much, Mbali. This was amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.